This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly plenary. Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Plenary Programme Sound.
Members, please take your seats. Halt your row of a leg. Members will have been saddened to learn of the passing of Her late Majesty the Queen. I therefore considered it appropriate to invite members to gather here today so that we might have an opportunity to pay our tributes and to offer condolences. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Secretary of State, Chris Heaton-Harris, at today's event in the public gallery. You're very welcome. Before I invite members to pay respects, I would like to make my own personal tribute to Her late Majesty. It is with sadness that members gather today to mark the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. As the reaction since her death has shown, Queen Elizabeth had a huge reputation across these islands and internationally for her devotion to public duty and a combination of a profound sense of dignity and indeed a sense of humour. In an assembly of different voices and alternative perspectives, I want to specifically recognise today that this is a sorrowful time for Unionist colleagues in the Chamber and all of those of a British and Unionist identity. I understand that you feel the loss of Queen Elizabeth deeply personally. It is important that you in particular have the opportunity to share your memories here today. However, the respect for Queen Elizabeth also went wider in our society, and she was held in high regard by many, particularly given the significant leadership that she contributed to making political progress here. It is hard for me actually to grasp all of the change that has occurred since Queen Elizabeth first came to the throne in the year that I personally was born. A lot has happened since then. However, at the start of her reign, it was rare for a woman to be in a position of leadership. By its end, women have now held most senior public offices, though much more progress remains to be made. In 1953, many families actually got television for the first time for her coronation. Now many are watching these events since her passing on their phone. She began with closed meetings with Winston Churchill as their first Prime Minister, and she ended with millions watching her share marmalade sandwiches with Paddington Bear. She did respond to the times, and I think I need say no further about that. In 2002, as one of her 3 visits to Stormont, she visited Parliament buildings to mark her Golden Jubilee. And speaking in the Great Hall, she set out the vision for this Assembly to meet the aspirations of both those who are proud to be of British and those who are proud to be Irish. In that same speech, she also accurately observed that life has never been straightforward here. The times that have passed since then have certainly proven that she was right about that. Tomorrow I will deliver a message of condolence to King Charles on behalf of the Assembly at Hillsborough Castle. And I will have more to say at that time about Queen Elizabeth's contribution to reconciliation. I am sure that many members will make reference to that this afternoon, including her historic visit to Dublin. For today, let me recognise that she was no mere figurehead and routinely sought to be briefed in order to develop a deeper understanding of many issues of the day. She made a point on several occasions of acknowledging the weight and the complexity of our troubled history across and between these islands. In her speech in Dublin Castle, she put an emphasis on being able to bow to the past without being bound to it, and I would add that we must learn from the past but not repeat it. In the last 18 months of her life, Queen Elizabeth experienced the sorrow of the loss of the Duke of Edinburgh and the celebrations for her historic Platinum Jubilee. Her death marks the end of an era, and it is right that we should mark it here in this chamber today. However, amidst all of the formalities of the events over past days and in the time ahead, let us be mindful today that a family is in mourning. On behalf of the Assembly, I express our sympathies to the family of Queen Elizabeth, who have lost a mother, grandmother and great-grandmother, our yes J. Goro Ahanam.
May she rest in peace.
I will now invite party leaders to pay their tributes, and I will call members then as they rise in their places. I encourage members to be brief, as I want to accommodate all those members who wish to speak before I conclude proceedings in and around 2:30 this afternoon. When tributes have concluded, as a mark of respect, we will have a minute's silence. Members are then welcome to join me in signing the Book of Condolences in the Great Hall. And I now call Michelle O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I wish to extend our condolences on the death of Queen Elizabeth II, whose sorrowful loss is felt deeply by her family and by many people across our society, particularly those of Unionist and British tradition, whom with great pride and devotion hold Queen Elizabeth and the royal family very dear. Her life and legacy will be fondly remembered by many people around the world. I think everybody will agree that it was a mammoth achievement to have marked 70 years of dedicated public service to the British people when she celebrated her Platinum Jubilee earlier this year. Today I wish to record the value and the respect I place on the significant contribution Queen Elizabeth made to the advancement of peace and to reconciliation between the different traditions on our island and between Ireland and Britain during the years of the peace process. It is appropriate that this is rightfully recognised in this chamber today. I recognise that she was a courageous and gracious leader. When the late Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness, and I met with Queen Elizabeth in Belfast in 2012 during her Diamond Jubilee, and thereafter at Windsor Castle during the state visit of the President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins, in 2014, her warmth, her kindness and her unfailing courtesy towards us was appreciated. The important symbolism of these encounters by both sides was understood and was designed to positively show leadership and, in a practical way, give example towards reconciliation. They were pointing to the peaceful future overwhelmingly endorsed by the people through their express support for the Good Friday Agreement, while acknowledging the regrettable divisions and tragedies of the past. In doing so, it was an acknowledgement of the substantial differences between our continuing and equally legitimate political aspirations. She made real efforts and in good faith to build relationships with those of us who are Irish and who share a different political allegiance to herself and her government, and who wish to exercise our right to self-determination based on consent to achieve reunification and a shared island for all. There is an onus on all of us in politics and in public life, but also the whole community, to follow her example and strengthen the bonds of friendship that will bring people and communities together. For far too long, we have lived back to back, and we must do more to start living side by side by building trust and showing mutual respect. As the incoming First Minister-elect of the Northern Ireland Executive, I will take every opportunity to extend the hand of friendship and renew this spirit of cooperation with the British King Charles III and also the people and traditions, British and Irish, to which he and I proudly represent. Having met him in County Cork back in 2018 alongside our Sinn Féin leader Mary MacDonald TD, we discussed the evolving relationships between Ireland and Britain and how reconciliation must be at the centre of all that we do as we move forward in these changing times. Can Corlia, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II truly marks the end of an historic era in our lifetime. I sincerely wish to acknowledge the sorrow and the huge sense of grief and loss many people will be feeling at this time right across our community and, of course, in this House today. Elected representatives, but also the workers here in this Assembly building and across public and civil service. I offer my sympathies and condolences to you all and do so in true friendship. May she rest in peace.
Thank you. And I now call Gordon Lyons.
Mr. Speaker, no tribute or eulogy, however smooth or eloquent, can do justice to the life and reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Since the news of her death last Thursday, many people in Northern Ireland, across the United Kingdom and throughout the world have felt deep sorrow at the passing of someone who, as it has often been said, we will never see the like of again. Some have even confessed to being taken aback by just how sad they feel about the passing of someone they had never met. I believe this great sadness that has been so evident across the country exists because we are beginning to realise what it is that we have lost. For so many people, she was the constant, the unchanging presence in all the seasons of our national and public life. For the last 70 years, she was there, opening Parliament, appointing Prime Ministers, leading our nation in remembrance, awarding honours to the best of those among us, and, even for some, dictating how quickly we ate our Christmas dinner so that we could hear the Queen in time. In an ever-changing world, in times of great national joy and celebration, and in times of sorrow, sadness and grief, she was the anchor, one we could look to for stability, continuity and comfort. In her first radio broadcast in October 1940, as the Battle of Britain raged in the skies above, the then Princess Elizabeth encouraged the nation by saying, "We know, every one of us, that in the end all will be well, for God will care for us and give us victory and peace." 80 years later, she was still encouraging the nation by reminding us that better days would return and that we will meet again. On both of those occasions, and countless times in between, she spoke to us, but she also had the extraordinary ability to speak for us, reflecting our concerns and our fears and our hopes for a better future. In that respect, she had a unique capacity to bring us together, and as we witness the national outpouring of grief and love for her, we recognise that in death, she still unites us. We have lost our greatest ever monarch, a leader who was remarkable, not just for the longevity of her reign, impressive though it was, but because she was an exemplar of service, sacrifice, and devotion to duty. Duty to the very end. That devotion to duty was as evident in Northern Ireland as anywhere else. When Her Majesty visited Northern Ireland for the first time as Queen, she addressed the Northern Ireland House of Commons saying, "I assure you that I will always strive to repay your loyalty and your devotion with my steadfast service to you." That steadfast service to Northern Ireland has been evident throughout her reign, whether through dark and troubling times when she was a comfort to those who were mourning, or through the extraordinary lengths that she went to personally to promote forgiveness and reconciliation among and between the peoples of this island. And of course, that loyalty from the people of Northern Ireland to their Queen was not unique to the early years of her reign, nor did it wane as time went on. That devotion from her subjects in Northern Ireland was as strong, and if I may say so, was stronger here than anywhere else. I believe that was best demonstrated by the rapturous reception that she received in the Stormont estate in June 2012 as part of her Diamond Jubilee celebrations. Mr. Speaker, whether we know it or not, we are all poor for her passing, and though saddened, our hearts are also full of gratitude for a life well lived, for a lifetime of service and leadership, and for her faith, which guided her, sustained her, and shaped her into the person that we mourn today. Her late Majesty frequently referenced how the teachings of Jesus were the bedrock of her faith and how it brought great comfort to her throughout her life. Her faith now brings great comfort to us as we are reminded that she is with the King of Kings whom she served. She has heard, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Mr. Speaker, we do, of course, recognise that first and foremost there is a family in mourning, and we send our sincerest condolences to those who have lost a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. We also recognise that this is a time of transition and change. The second Elizabethan era is over, but a new reign begins. We pay tribute to His Majesty for decades of service thus far. And as he takes on his new responsibilities, our prayer for him is that which is found in our national anthem. May he defend our laws and ever give us cause to sing with heart and voice, God save the King.
Thank you, and I call Naomi Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as we draw together today to pay our tributes to the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, I think we first remember that at the heart of all of this, whilst the Commonwealth and this country have lost a monarch, there is a family that are grieving the loss of a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, a confidant and friend, and a matriarch. And it is to them that I turn my thoughts first today in offering them my condolences and those of my colleagues. When we reflect on monarchy, of course, we acknowledge that there are a range of views on the institutions. It is one of immense privilege. However, not everyone who is subject to such immense privilege gives so much in return. And I think it is a remarkable achievement, not just to have served and to have served on the throne as the Queen did for such a long period, but to have done so with such unswerving dedication to duty, right to her final hours, to have continued in the work to which she was called, I believe is a remarkable legacy that she leaves behind. Her Majesty the Queen managed to transcend that wider debate about the institutions because she personified something, I think, which most people could admire. There was a graciousness, there was a generosity in how she did her work, there was a dedication to duty which we can all admire, but also a twinkle in her eye and a sense of humour as she went about her royal duties, when she made people feel comfortable in her presence, when she put people at ease and made them feel that she was someone who understood, despite the huge privilege that she had, could understand their everyday concerns. I remember that twinkle in her eye as she worked with James Bond at the beginning of the London Olympics. That sense of fun and the fact that the family only found out afterwards what had been planned, I think speaks to someone who, despite the weight of huge office, managed to maintain a kind of personal sense of enjoyment in the work that she did. She led the country through times of unprecedented change. The speed of change has been immense. 15 prime ministers, countless world leaders. The changes in technology that we have seen and witnessed in that period are remarkable. Yet she embodied a constancy at the heart of it all. A sense of peace and calm reigned where she went, and she managed at the same time to make nods to modernity, as we saw with the recent CGI with Paddington Bear, something which was touching at the time, but perhaps even more so now. She embraced live television addresses to enter into people's living rooms in a personal way, and she managed, even in her Diamond Jubilee year, to show that she was not behind the times. Yet she was a constant in all of our lives and will be hugely missed as a result of her loss. For me, her graciousness and her generosity, however, were exemplified in two issues that I want to raise, and that is her engagement on these islands. First of all, with the state visit to Ireland, when she acknowledged that our complex and interwoven lives were often the source of pain to one another, and yet she did it with real grace, as only someone who fully understands personal loss can do. I also think that her meeting with the late Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness and that outstretched hand of friendship gave permission to those of us in our community who have themselves lost and suffered grief as a result of our complex history to be able to actually start to reconcile one with another, to recognise that we are not enemies in these islands, but we are kith and kin, that we should be friends first and foremost. In that graciousness in our contested history, in that permission that she has given us to reconcile, I hope will lie her lasting legacy for these islands, because I think it is important that each of us take that forward. It is the end of an era. It is one that any of us in this chamber are unlikely to witness the like of again. It also comes at a time of profound change and profound challenge in our society. And so I want to take my concluding words to wish King Charles God's blessing as he goes forward in the role that he has assumed. And I wish for him the same dedication to duty, the same generosity of spirit, and the same love and support and good counsel that his late mother enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you, and I call Doug Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Queen is dead. And on behalf of the Ulster Unionist Party, I wished to pass on my condolences to the King, to his brothers, his sister, and the wider family on the death of their mother, their grandmother, their great-grandmother, our Queen. And what a Queen she was. 70 glorious and at times difficult years that heralded a new Elizabethan age, one we never knew we were living through until now. The Queen reigned through massive political, social and economic change, the decline of empire and heavy industry, the rise of the Commonwealth, the Cold War and the moon landings, war, terrorism, the growth of the internet. Throughout these changes and challenges, the Queen remained a constant, creating stability and a national focus. Her Majesty the Queen had a knack of remaining current, accessible, approachable in a changing world. Although she would stand with heads of state, with prime ministers, with presidents, and with other kings and queens, she never lost her common, personable touch. Like many, I have met the Queen, and I look forward to some of the small, humorous quips that some may raise while we're here today. Yet I cannot. I cannot because I am deeply saddened by the loss of the Queen. There is grief that I feel, that many millions of people around the world are feeling now as I stand here. This is not something that I expected, because we all knew the Queen was getting frailer and we knew this time would come. Yet watching her just 48 hours before continuing to do her duty, nobody expected it to come so quickly. I read my oath of allegiance to the Queen as a young soldier aged just 16. I've served beneath the Queen's colours all my life. My transition from soldier to officer is marked by a royal commission to my Stormont office, signed by the Queen. As distant as the royal family could be, the Queen was ever present in our lives, in my life. I was in uniform on Thursday evening when I heard of her passing. Her Majesty epitomised service. That service and commitment to reconciliation on this island produced an extraordinary visit to Ireland in 2011, showing courage, leadership and generosity of spirit, she won the hearts of the Irish people, forging links between the United Kingdom and Ireland as never before. A kinship to these islands I hope we could rekindle once again. The Queen understood service. The award of the George Cross to the Royal Ulster Constabulary, the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross to the Home Service Battalions of the Royal Irish Regiment, as well as presenting colours to the Ulster Defence Regiment, all done in person, were crafted to recognise service. In shaking the hand of the late Martin McGuinness a year after a visit to Ireland, the Queen knew the symbolism of such an action. Although her family had been directly touched by the Troubles, she knew such a selfless act would generate a momentum to help heal deep wounds. Something we must all be thankful for, be us young or old. Many people don't fully understand a constitutional monarch, yet the Queen explained it in her own words the best, and I quote her: "I cannot lead you into battle. I do not give you laws or administer justice, but I can do something else. I can give you my heart and my devotion to these old islands and to all the people of our brotherhood of nations." Even as the Queen's health began to fail, we saw that devotion of duty and actions for the greater good of the nation. It was heartbreaking to see the Queen sit alone at her husband's funeral, who she'd been married to for 73 years. But she knew she had to do that for the good of this nation. Such was the example she set. So often the words of Queen Elizabeth II have comforted a nation in difficult times, and it is with her words that I will finish. To be inspirational, you don't have to save lives or win medals. I often draw strength from meeting with ordinary people doing extraordinary things: volunteers, carers, community organisers and good neighbours, unsung heroes whose quiet dedication makes them special. The Queen is dead. Long live the King.
Thank you, and I call Matthew O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In rising to express sincere condolence on behalf of the SDLP on the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, I'm conscious of the deep and real mourning of many in this chamber, in my constituency, across Northern Ireland, across these islands, and indeed around the world. The passing of the Queen is, of course, particularly poignant for those from British and Unionist backgrounds, among whom she commanded profound and sincere feelings of loyalty and allegiance, of belonging to something bigger than themselves. Though many of us don't feel the same tie of allegiance, what was remarkable about the late Queen was her ability to win the respect and even affection from people from a hugely diverse range of backgrounds. And her sheer length of service, her enduring presence as a public figure through 7 decades of enormous upheaval, means that her passing will prompt reflection from virtually everyone. The first British Prime Minister of her reign, Churchill, was born in 1874, the final one in 1975, 101 years apart. But while the Queen's reign was notable for its length, its most notable achievement in this part of the world came largely in its final decade. Her extraordinary contribution, as has been mentioned already by all speakers, her extraordinary contribution to reconciliation on this island and between the islands of Britain and Ireland. Mr. Speaker, we are all products of history. All of us in this chamber know how history can weigh on it. When Queen Elizabeth was born in 1926, the construction of the building we are meeting in had not yet begun. Ireland had been partitioned just 5 years before, and the Northern Ireland Parliament was still meeting in Union College in my constituency. King George V, the Queen's grandfather, was still head of state of Searstadt Éireann, the Irish Free State, and would be for another decade. The role of the Crown in Ireland deeply divided people, and of course, Mr. Speaker, to some extent, it still does. But the extraordinary achievement of the late Queen Elizabeth was to use her symbolic role to positively move beyond safe historical positions towards new understandings, new connections, towards reconciliation. As the living symbol of the Crown, she embodied something on which people in Ireland have been historically deeply divided. But she was able to use that symbolic role to bring people together. As has already been pointed out, her state visit in 2011, paying sincere respects at the Garden of Remembrance to people who had fought for Irish independence, her couple focal at Dublin Castle, and her willingness to engage with the complexity of Irish and British history. And yes, her handshake, which required courage from the late Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness. These were significant acts that a British monarch in her 9th decade did not need to undertake, but she did. As I've said, we are all products of history, but we have a choice about how we respond to history. Do we act simply as delegates of a difficult past, or do we build new connections and new understandings? The example of Queen Elizabeth was to stretch herself, to be generous, and to use the symbolic power of her role not simply to command loyalty, but to win respect, warmth, and build bridges. And, Mr. Speaker, generosity can be contagious. I'm not personally a monarchist, and it would be disingenuous to pretend otherwise. As an Irish National Social Democratic Party, we can disagree with the principle of the institution while acknowledging that the late Queen Elizabeth was an exceptional woman and an exceptional monarch. Though I've talked about the large acts of symbolism, for many who met the Queen from all backgrounds, which in Northern Ireland must by now number thousands, a small moment of connection often had a large personal impact. For all those countless acts of small generosity, and for the large act of generosity she performed in building bridges on this island and across this island, her extraordinary legacy is assured. Our thoughts are with all those mourning, our near neighbours and people around the world. Arjesh Gora Ahanam Delish. May she rest in peace.
Thank you. And I call Jim Allister.
Mr. Speaker, like others, I begin by placing on record my sincere condolences to the immediate and wider family of our late Majesty, who, despite the profile of their mother or grandmother or great-grandmother, she was just that to them. And I think all of us who've lived and lost in life appreciate the loss that they will be feeling at this very difficult time, accentuated by the fact that of necessity it is very much in the public eye. And it is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that the sorrow of this nation is palpable, but so too is the gratitude for the life and the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. The global regard in which our gracious Majesty was held is reflected in the worldwide tributes, many of which rightly focus on our unstinting and our unparalleled service. This place is familiar with the concept of a pledge of office. But the honouring of the voluntary pledge by our late Queen when she was just 21 is unsurpassed in its faithful implementation. I invite anyone, and indeed it would be a good reflective exercise for us all, to measure our promises with our product. But when you measure the promise of the young Princess Elizabeth with the life she lived, then there can be no doubt about the fulfilment. On her 21st birthday in South Africa, she famously said these words: "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong." Has ever a pledge been more fully or more splendidly carried through than that pledge. Among her many strengths of character was her capacity for empathy and putting everyone that she met at ease. But hers was not a life immune from burdens and heartache. One such affliction, of course, was the wicked murder of the elderly Lord Mountbatten by the IRA. Yet she bore it with great fortitude, with generosity, with grace, even to the point of having to shake the blood-stained hand of an IRA commander. And shamefully in this House, there are still those who would seek to justify that and every other IRA murder through the Republican lie of no alternative. Happily, Queen Elizabeth was a leader of moral fibre who knew right from wrong, not a disciple of moral equivalence or ambiguity. And I thank God that she did indeed long reign over us. With the new king, everything will seem different. But the abiding constancy of the monarchy and the centrality to our constitutional arrangements remains. And as of necessity, we step into a new era. I say from heart and voice, God save the King.
I call Alex Easton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to pass on my deepest condolence to the royal family and to mark, mourn and indeed celebrate the life of our sovereign Queen Elizabeth II. This is such sad news that has affected the whole country. We have not only lost our Queen, but our rock, and a person that was always there for us over the last 70 years with her devotion to duty and to our people. We owe her such a debt of gratitude which can never be repaid, and we will never see the likes of her again. Thank you for being that rock that bound us all together. As I reflect on her accession to the throne 70 years ago on the death of her father, King George VI, when the Time magazine made her Woman of the Year, it stated, and we take a moment now to reflect on the profound nature of these words, a fresh young blossom on roots that had weathered many a season of wintry doubt. I think we can all agree that blossom in 70 years never faded. Her late Majesty personified the nature of service. Her life was of service and duty. Her Majesty was the rock we looked to in times of trouble, and we were never failed. A constant presence of many like me, all my life, a living example to follow. Unique and unsurpassed, and correctly referred to as Elizabeth the Great. Our longest reigning monarch served with distinction. It is impossible to do justice to her life in the time available. Indeed, I fear words are insufficient, whatever the time that is made available. Thank you is simply to say, however, accurately reflects the gratitude of the nation. We thank you for your unparalleled service. We say thank you for your leadership. We say thank you for your guiding hand and your voice that had that amazing ability to encapsulate everything that needed to be said in both joy and sorrow. Your profound faith, so often reflected in the Christmas messages, was a powerful testimony to us all. We give thanks to God for your life that was enriched us all here. Through great change over 70 years, you could facilitate and adapt while simultaneously maintaining core values and living an exemplary standard few of us can live up to. In the manner of Her late Majesty would have wished, we proclaim God save the King. Our thoughts and prayers are with King Charles III. Our best wishes are with the royal family, and may God comfort them in the loss of their mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. Unique in length of service, dignity and duty, an inspiration to us all, an example to inspire, we return our thanks to Almighty God for her life. Our Queen Elizabeth was unique, and we'll never see the likes of her again. Thank you.
And I call Claire Sugden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am deeply saddened by the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and I wish to offer my heartfelt condolences to His Majesty King Charles III, the royal family, those who knew and loved the Queen across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and throughout the world. I loved her too, and deeply admired the woman she was, not necessarily because of her role or the institution she represented, but because of her leadership, grace and service of others. The crown on her head is not what made Elizabeth the Great, but rather the duty she fiercely upheld for those she served, even in her final days. Queen Elizabeth was our greatest public servant, dedicating her life to others. Women inspire me in all the roles they perform, as mothers, grandmothers, sisters, wives, friends, public servants, leaders and monarchy. The Queen was all of these. And again, it is not the role, but rather the performance. The Queen's performance was feminine, humble, grateful, diligent and strong. Queen Elizabeth carried past legacy into a changing and modern future. She remained, however, constant in her stoicism, her ability to relate and connect with people, and served as a unifying centre in an age when communication has blurred humanity and political fluctuation unsettles. Her Majesty lived through many generations, and perhaps her greatest gift to us was her counsel through that long experience. We mourn Queen Elizabeth, the woman she was, the values she represented, and the last connection to an era that only memories and historic texts will now recall. I feel fortunate to have lived when she reigned, and I was honoured to meet the Queen in 2016, and I hold this as a great moment in my life. She was warm, kind, and curious of a 29-year-old female leader when others were critical. She also spoke to my husband and reminded him of the support that he should offer me and advised that he would see very little of me, which felt like a nod to the support her wonderful husband gave her. Endings remind us of other endings and loss, especially those close to us who are no longer here. I think of all of those who have lost loved ones in recent years. I lost my parent just under a year ago, and every day I struggle with that grief. The Queen's passing has helped me express my grief, and I expect many others across the country and world feel the same. While she lived a different life to most, she was born, she lived, and she died. She was human. But it was her remarkable ability during her lifetime to relate with and lead people that makes us feel so connected to her loss. I take great comfort from Her Majesty's famous words, that grief is the price we pay for love. And to build upon her words, I'm often told that grief does not go away, but becomes an important part of our lives. And our shared grief today is another part of our collective journey. The past days and the weeks ahead are significant. We are experiencing a profound moment in history. It feels surreal, but very special to be part of. And I look forward to the reign of King Charles III. And I was fortunate to meet him too when he was Prince of Wales. And I saw his mother's warmth and curiosity. And since becoming king, I appreciate how he has embraced the nation and his genuine emotion in a world that increasingly feels disconnected and lacking humanity. As we begin a new era, I hope he and the world can carry on the values of a great woman. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the constituents of East Londonderry, I give thanks for the life and values of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. God save the King.
Thank you, and I call Michelle McElveen.
Speaker, and I rise to pay tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, our Queen, Head of State, Head of the Commonwealth and Defender of the Faith. Throughout her 70 years on the throne, the Queen became the embodiment of our national anthem. She was noble, she was gracious, she was certainly long to reign over us, and in winning our hearts and love, she was victorious. While she served as our Queen for 70 years, her public service began much sooner. Her life changed dramatically when her father became king, and at that moment, as a 5-year-old, she became heir to the throne.
At 13 years of age, she made her first public speech to address the children of the Empire, to give comfort during the dark days of the Second World War. She somewhat prophetically said, "And when peace comes, remember it will be for us, the children of today, to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place." At 21, Princess Elizabeth made her now famous oath of service. "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong." As we now know, hers was to be a long life, and she fulfilled that vow to be devoted to the service of this nation. She was just 25 years old when, at her father's untimely death, when she assumed the mantle of monarch. Her life was one of dedicated, unflinching public service, which she dutifully executed for over 70 years. A life played out in public, every appearance, utterance, and facial expression subject to intense scrutiny. She presided over a country impoverished by years of bloody world war, to see it rebuilt as a modern, vibrant powerhouse. As Queen, she adapted the monarchy to meet the expectations of modern life. She leaves the British monarchy in a much stronger and respected position than it has ever been. She did all this with an unshakable faith, without compromising on her values as a Christian. She was perhaps the most famous woman in the world, and the death of Queen Elizabeth has made headlines across the globe, resulting in an outpouring of grief in every corner of the world. To see the Brandenburg Gate lit up with the Union flag, Sydney Opera House with Her Majesty's face, the Swiss tribute on the Matterhorn, and flowers being laid at sites across the world, and to hear world leaders and world citizens paying their tributes and sharing their memories, it's evident that this was a very special woman. She was more than just our Queen. She was the world's Queen. However, she was also a mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Her family will feel that personal loss deeply, and I think we were all moved by the words of the new Prince of Wales, Prince William, when he said, "She was by my side at my happiest moments, and she was by my side during the saddest days of my life." May I pass on my deepest condolences to our new King Charles III and the rest of the royal family. The passing of the Queen is deeply personal to them and will leave a huge void. I pray that the outpouring of goodwill and warmth from the nation and the world will provide them with some comfort. God save the King.
Thank you, and I call Stuart Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to pay tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth II with profound sadness, but also with remembrance and celebration of a remarkable life. I was born in the reign of the late Queen's father, George VI. A very little memory of the coronation as a very young child. My first real memory of the Queen was when she visited Northern Ireland in 1961, landing at Carrickfergus Harbour, visiting the castle and Green Island Hospital. Indeed, I was standing there with my parents at Green Island Hospital, and that was the day that I caught my first glimpse of the Queen as she waved to the crowds. Little did I know as an 11-year-old then that I would one day have the privilege of being the mayor of the historic borough of Carrickfergus, or indeed later to be invited to Buckingham Palace to meet the Queen. Many here will have their personal recollections of meeting or seeing her. For me, it was, as a Winston Churchill Fellow, to be invited to Buckingham Palace to celebrate 50 years of Winston Churchill Fellowships, the late Queen being the patron of the fellowship. There I enjoyed not only an awe-inspiring visit to the palace, an incredible reception, a formal handshake with the Queen, and to this day a cherished conversation with her about the Churchill Fellows, and to share my memory of her visit to Carrickfergus. Along with some 200 fellows that evening, my abiding memory was how, after the formal handshake, she joined us in informal groups, chatting about our fellowships, our topics, where we came from across the United Kingdom, and sharing our stories about Winston Churchill. She was a gracious host, and we were entertained till late in the evening. I know others here today will reference and reflect on her international influence, her commitment to peace and to reconciliation, not least of all here, and across our islands, her steadfast duty and a life of service. I too want to pay tribute to that life of service and to say today, thank you, to remember not only with sadness, but with a great celebration of life. My thoughts go out to her family. And to our new King, I wish him a long and glorious reign. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, and I call Robin Swan.
Thank you, Speaker. Over more than 7 decades, and especially in recent times, you have supported the people of our country with courage, compassion and dedication, demonstrating the highest standards of public service, and you have our enduring thanks and heartfelt appreciation. Speaker, a tribute that could be played to Her Majesty the Queen, but in her service was actually the citation when she gave the George Cross to the National Health Service across all 4 nations in regards to their service and dedication, not just for the past 70 years, but also for their commitment and service during the COVID pandemic. And that was the strength and the dedication that she was able to show as monarch and our Queen. And it was through those challenging times, and it often has been said in here in regards to her Christmas message, but also back in April 2020, when she addressed the nation in regards to what was in front of us, but what was also in the unknown, when she said, I hope in the years to come, everyone will be able to take pride in how they responded to this challenge. And those who come after us will say the Britons of this generation were as strong as any. But also, Speaker, in that address, she again epitomised the people of this country and across the islands in regards to our response to COVID, in an address that was so characteristic and reflecting of who she herself was, when she spoke of the attributes of self-discipline, of quiet good humour, resolve, and of fellow feeling still characterised this country. Because she said at that point that the pride in who we are is not a part of our past, it defines our present and our future. Speaker, I think one of the most poignant images of Her Majesty the Queen was sitting alone at her husband's funeral. But it was through her faith, I believe in Christ, and where she knew she would be, that she finished that public statement by saying we should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return, and we will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again, and we will meet again. Speaker, I pay tribute to Her Majesty the Queen for a life long of service, of dedication and of commitment to the people who she served. And I wish our incoming King and our present King God's richest blessing. God save the Queen.
Thank you, and I call Eben Poots.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for organising this tribute today. As we reflect on Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, I think we should reflect on her words. And Her Majesty spoke often of her Christian values and how they were her guiding principle throughout her reign. And as a follower of Christ, she took the example of Christ. And Christ was a servant king, and she gave herself to serving the community. Some people speak of privilege. She saw the privilege of being the people's servant. And she went about that role in a particular way which won many, many people to her. I had the privilege of meeting the Queen on a number of occasions, but most especially I remember being given the responsibility of showing around the South West Hospital which she came to open. And throughout that time, she met the staff, the doctors, the nurses, the therapists, the cleaners, the porters, the kitchen staff. She spoke to them with grace, with compassion, humility, caring, and she done that also with the patients. Showed them real attention.
she done it in a dignified way, with fortitude. And again, she followed Christ's example of grace, compassion, and humility. She went further because she didn't just meet friends. She met people who would not be assumed to be friends. And she done so as Christ sat down with people who others criticised him for. But she followed his example and met people who it was difficult for her to do. I believe it was difficult for them to do as well. But she'd done that to build relationships that were broken for centuries, to help to build friendship, build peace. We have been privileged to have a queen such as Queen Elizabeth II. She has demonstrated an example to each and every one of us in our lives. She's lived a life well. She's run her race well. And as we pay tribute to her and give honour to her for what she has done, what she has achieved, we thank God for every remembrance of Her Majesty the Queen. We wish her family our deepest sympathies and prayers, and we pay particular tribute to her son Charles as he takes over the role. And as we say goodbye to the Queen, long may the King reign over us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the member, and I call Patricia O'Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, like all others in the chamber today, was deeply saddened to learn of the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen was a true leader, a dedicated public servant and a dignified figurehead. Her contribution to peace building in Northern Ireland will never be forgotten, and her legacy will echo throughout the generations. Earlier we heard from my party leader who spoke of the twinkle in her eye, which was matched only by her remarkable gift to enable people to feel comfortable. So I want to share a short personal story on how she enabled me to feel comfortable. In 2019, I was honoured to be the second student in the history of Northern Ireland to be selected to serve as a scholar and now a fellow at the prestigious Institute of Cumberland Lodge, a charity owned and led by the Queen. It was in this setting I first had the pleasure of meeting the Queen. I was introduced as young Patricia O'Lynn, an aspiring politician from North Antrim. I looked around the room that seemed slightly disinterested, but that was until the Chief Executive explained that North Antrim indeed was the birthland of the DUP, and more importantly, led by the long-standing Ian Paisley. At this point, there was a collective gasp in the room. That was because the enormity, and some would argue political impossibility, of my task had sunk in. I started to turn red, I began to visibly sweat, and I think she could tell I might have passed out. But throughout the entire conversation, I looked at the Queen. Not once did she flinch, not once did she react. She smiled at me and said she was always fascinated by those politicians who became so disheartened when faced with deceit. She then continued to say, one must never give up. For me, this short but simple phrase captures the essence of peace building. It is the essence of public service, and it is the essence of dignity. It is also, I believe, the essence of her spirit. It is a phrase we should all endeavour to remember as we seek to create a better Northern Ireland, not just for ourselves and our political interests, but for each other. It was Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II who said, "Grief is the price we pay for love." And Mr. Speaker, since the passing of the Queen, I have spoken to constituents right across North Antrim from all different backgrounds, religious traditions and political affiliations. The common thread throughout all our conversations is our collective grief for the loss of the Queen. What this tells me is how deeply loved she was and still is. One indisputable fact is that the Queen was a woman of deep faith. She often talked in public about how, when faced with adversity, she would refer to Scripture. And so, in seeking to offer some solace to all those who mourn her loss, I turn to words of faith. Now, these words are not from my own religious tradition, but from a well-known East Belfast Baptist minister, the late Shugi Emerson. Shuggie, at the funeral of his wife Nell, told the congregation that yes, grief is indeed the price we pay for love. But in our grief, we must remember to look for joy and solace, because this is not goodbye. It is simply a good night, and we will see her in the morning. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the people of North Antrim, I extend our condolences to the royal family on this sad occasion. I welcome and congratulate King Charles III and wish him a long, happy and successful reign. And for Queen Elizabeth II, may she rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. And I call Alan Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our nation is currently dealing with an outpouring of great sadness at the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, a monarch we selfishly hoped might endure forever. The nation is also dealing with the accession to the throne of a new monarch, King Charles III. As others have said, it can be easy, Mr. Speaker, as we see the many public appearances of members of the royal family attending to their duties at this time, that this is a family in mourning for a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. Their sadness and grief is no different to that suffered by all families who have to deal with the passing of a loved one. Given the public face of the royal family, their tears will be shed in private. They will be no less sorrowful nor painful than those we all shed for the loss of a loved one. Over the next 7 days, leading to the state funeral of our gracious and much-loved late Queen, the members of the royal family will be central to all the public events that are part of a state funeral. The example of deep faith expressed and acted out by Her Majesty will help her family deal with all they will be called upon to do. By example of the Queen, that faith will undoubtedly have been embraced and shared by those closest to her. As father of this house, I suspect that there will only be a few like myself serving in this house that can proudly say the Queen reigned over them for the entirety of her 70-year monarchy. It has been a privilege to have been a loyal subject of Her Majesty for all of those years, and I am proud to have had the opportunity and honour to have worn a uniform of the Crown in dutiful service to Her Majesty and the community. In a very poignant comment that was alluded to by another speaker, Prince William made a comment about his grandmother where he said she had been by his side in the saddest of his days and also at his happiest moments. As we look back over the years of her reign, Mr. Speaker, we can all echo those heartfelt sentiments of Prince William, to whom he touchingly referred to her as his granny. She was indeed a rock to the nation in sad times and an inspiration to us all in times of joy and celebration. Her wisdom and her internationally renowned diplomatic skills were beyond reproach. I am confident that our new king will inherit these qualities and bring them to bear for the good of our nation as we move forward. I give thanks for the many personal and family sacrifices the Queen has made in her efforts to serve our nation and her esteemed Commonwealth that she held in such high regard. We were indeed blessed to have her as our monarch for those 70 glorious years. My constituency of North Down has played host to many visits by the Queen and her beloved husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, during her reign, and provided them with the warmest of welcomes on each occasion. We were thrilled to have Bangor granted honorary city status by Her Majesty as part of her Platinum Jubilee celebrations. We will miss her deeply. On behalf of those I represent, I say thank you, Your Majesty, for all that you stood for during your long life of service to our nation. A service that is easy to overlook, even extended to the years before she was crowned Queen. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to being a loyal subject of King Charles III. God save the King long may he reign over us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I call Joanne Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our gracious and glorious Majesty has passed away. I have no words sufficiently adequate or eloquent to convey my feelings, nor those of my constituents in East Belfast at such a time as this, and certainly none which have not been already said and echoed around the globe. As a nation, we mourn and grieve her loss. We are shocked, devastated, and immensely sad. None of it seems real. Such was the suddenness, it's difficult to absorb that she is gone. For many of us, she was the only constant we have ever known. Indeed, it feels like the loss of a family member. We loved, admired, and revered her. We will miss her, but how blessed we were to have her as our sovereign lady. She was a shining example for us to emulate, the epitome of everything British, including the values for which she stood: dedication to duty, faith, freedom, justice, and civil and religious liberty, to name but a few. She made us proud to be British and feel privileged to be her subjects and part of this, her United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Wise, funny, charismatic, an animal lover, fair, in tune, compassionate, concerned, grounded, forgiving and gracious. The list of her qualities is endless. She was our country's greatest asset, a living history who reassured and inspired in equal measure and as her nation required. We have watched on in our own lifetime as she dazzled at home and abroad and enthralled all who met her with her beaming smile. As has been borne out by the outpouring of tributes from across the globe, we were the envy of the world to have her as ours. I never had the chance to meet Her Majesty, and I always wished and hoped that I would. But that I did not may be for the best. The closest I came was during Her late Majesty's visit to Titanic Belfast for lunch during her Diamond Jubilee in 2012. She was 2 tables away, and if I turned to my left, she was directly in my line of sight. I was completely overwhelmed with emotion from the moment I set eyes on her. And so the crying began. After a while, the conversation between my husband and I went something along the lines of, "Stop crying." "I can't." "Why not?" "Well, the Queen is over there, and every time I look at her, I cry." "Stop looking at her." "I can't. The Queen is over there." So completely transfixed and unable to draw my eyes from her, I blubbed my way through the entire afternoon, all dignity, composure, and indeed makeup gone, but completely overjoyed that I had even been in her presence. I will never forget that day. As with all things, there's how we feel, and then there is what we know. And as we come to terms with our deep feelings over her loss, we may take comfort in what we know. As we learned from her Christmas broadcasts, we know that our monarch was a woman of deep Christian faith, familiar with the scriptures, who lived by the example of her Lord and his word and encouraged her nation to do likewise. Thus we know that she is in heaven with her Saviour. We also know that her legacy will live on forever and that our monarchy, through her son and his heir, will go on in seamless transition. This year, too, the mystery was finally solved. We all now know what she kept in her ever-present handbag. An historic reign has come to an end. This United Kingdom, as we know it, will never be the same again. We know we shall never see her like again. But we also know that our new King, Charles III, is a man of vast experience, compassion, warmth and knowledge, and that his whole life has been spent in preparation for what lies ahead. We can be assured that he is more than ready and dedicated to the task, even as he mourns his beloved mother. Our King has given beautiful and emotive speeches this past number of days. Even in his own time of grief, he has sought to comfort and reassure us, his people. But central to all of the official ceremony is a family who is bereft. We uphold the royal family today and pray God's grace, comfort and blessing upon them. As we move into a new era, still grieving the loss of a remarkable woman who was our cherished Queen, we say, in the now iconic words of Paddington Bear, "Thank you, ma'am, for everything." And so in silence, with hearts full of love, sorrow and gratitude, we remember and give thanks. God save the King.
Thank the member, and I call John Blair.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I rise today, along with colleagues, to try to pay fitting tribute to the late monarch, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and address also, if I can, the deep sense of loss and sadness which is felt across these islands and also, of course, felt far beyond. I will firstly, though, if I may, Mr. Speaker, start with a thank you to you, to the Assembly Secretariat, and to all officials involved in ensuring that this Assembly responded swiftly and appropriately when the sad news of the Queen's passing was received last week. When I attended, Mr. Speaker, the County Antrim proclamation of accession for His Majesty King Charles III yesterday, held in Castle Gardens, Antrim, I was struck by how poignant the occasion was, and also that there was such a clear combination of a number of things. Firstly, the respect for and sadness, clear sadness, at the loss of the late Queen. There was, of course, the witnessing of history, and also clearly a community standing together to look forward and wish the new King well. And I think that coming together of community was something that Queen Elizabeth referred to often, and it was obviously of great importance to her. She clearly believed that people, whatever their background, whatever their opinion, whatever their faith, should respect, help and support each other. And this fits, of course, very well with her frequent references to forgiveness and also to reconciliation. It is my hope, and I suspect the hope of many others, that these themes will be carried forward by all in public life, in her memory and in honour of her life. Mr. Speaker, there will be continued mention of the duration and dedication of the Queen's service, and there should be. That unwavering commitment to her role and to people is something that will be remembered forever, as is the dignity with which her work was carried out. We'll be hopefully in that, learning from this resolve for us all. I will close with my sincere sympathy to the royal family, to royal staff and to all those affected by her loss, and I will add my very own genuine thank you, ma'am.
I thank the member, and I call Steve Aiken.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. I rise to add my thoughts on the passing of our most gracious Sovereign Lady, Her Majesty the Queen. I had the honour to meet and be presented to Her Majesty on several occasions. Her sense of humour came across clearly to me when I was commanding the nuclear submarine HMS Sovereign. At an investiture in Buckingham Palace, she asked me about my command. I said the Sovereign was a pleasure to be captain of, but she was now showing her age, creaking a bit in the wrong places, and needed an awful lot of tender, loving care just to get her going. Her Majesty, with a twinkle in her eye, turned to me and said, "Commander, I do hope the Sovereign you're talking about is the submarine and not me." Several years later, I saw her in a different guise, after being presented to her at Windsor Castle at the state visit of the Irish President in 2014. In the throne room that evening, there were over 100 politicians and members of civil society from across these islands. Church leaders, current and ex-Prime Ministers, Taoiseachs, Tónasters, First Ministers, Deputy First Ministers, and a wide gamut of other politicians from across the political spectrum, from ardent loyalists to equally ardent Republicans. All, though some wouldn't admit it, were all in awe of meeting Her Majesty in such august surroundings. That through her effortless tact and charm, she could bring all of this assembled throng to respectful order, that they all heard her speak with passion, empathy, dignity and understanding about our island, and also about the strong and enduring relationships across all of our islands. That evening, I think we all, despite the contested and complexity of our shared pasts, felt that there was definite hope for our collective futures. She, in the words of her speech of welcome and her quiet conversations in the margins with each of us, pointed to a desire to help build a new future together, a shared and a partnership that would be built on each other's identities, proudly British, Irish, or both. That evening, regardless of what had been in our past history, we were all happy to rise and toast Her Majesty and the Irish President. Much, Mr. Speaker, will be talked about her legacy. However, the sense of hope and shared understanding that emanated from Windsor Castle in 2014 must be what we, as elected representatives of Northern Ireland, should now be redoubling our efforts to rebuild. As His Majesty takes on the mantle of the monarchy, with all the challenges and complexities he faces, surely it is now incumbent for all of us to give meaning to Her Majesty's, the late Queen's, rich example, and to strive that extra mile and more, and to make Northern Ireland work for all of us within our proud United Kingdom. God save the King.
I'm going to call Paul Gibbon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have lost our Queen, the head of state, head of nation, but the royal family have also lost the head of their home. They mourn the loss of their mother, grandmother, a great-grandmother, and yet in this moment of profound personal sadness, they are putting duty first and leading the nation through this time of grief. I offer His Majesty King Charles III and his family, my and that of my constituents in Lagan Valley, home of the royal family's official residence in Royal Hillsborough, sincere condolences and Christian sympathy, remembering them in prayer before the throne of grace. Days after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, our hearts grow heavier still as emotions have stirred, at times overwhelming, when we realise how privileged we have been to live through this golden age of monarchy. We hoped it would go on further still, but now the late Queen is with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, joining with the angels to sing her favourite hymn, "Praise my soul, the King of heaven, to His feet thy tribute bring. Ransomed, healed, restored, forgiven, who like thee His praise should sing? Praise Him, praise Him, praise the everlasting King." We thank God for the life of Elizabeth the Great. Great not just because of 70 years of reign, the longest ever serving monarch, but because of a life utterly devoted to service, sacrifice, and public duty. Throughout her reign, especially at times of crises, the nation looked to Her Majesty for that unwavering steadfastness she provided in times of adversity. When all seemed hopeless, she gave hope that better times were ahead. This is true for Northern Ireland. Standing with us in our darkest hours, we shall be forever grateful for the late Queen's strength to endure. She knew the pain and sorrow felt by many when the royal family was plunged into grief by the IRA's assassination of Earl Mountbatten at Mullaghmore in 1979. And yet, she rose above this grief and sought peace and reconciliation. Leading by example, the late Queen has transformed relationships in Northern Ireland and across this island. The state visit to the Republic of Ireland in 2011 and the manner in which the Queen spoke and acted proved to be a defining moment in our history and heralded a new dawn in British-Irish relations. The response from the people of Ireland showed the warmth and affection she was held in far beyond her own realms and kingdom. And the task set before us is to follow her example and be inspired to reach new heights and walk the path of peace and reconciliation paved before us. I was privileged to meet the late Queen on a number of occasions, and in her company you knew you were in the presence of greatness. Humility and grace personified, Her Majesty commanded not just our loyalty to the Crown, but our adoration for absolute devotion to us, her people. We say thank you for everything. The Queen's demise is not the end, but a new beginning, as seamlessly the crown has passed to her heir and son, King Charles III. And we look forward to a new era, confident the King will build upon her legacy. To His Majesty, King Charles III, we pledge our allegiance. God save the King.
Thank you. And I call Saoirse Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to give thanks and pay tribute to the life and service of Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen had a truly remarkable reign, a life marked by service and selflessness. She came to symbolise stability for many, a constant presence in a world that was changing all around her and us. To many, a source of comfort and reassurance. Like many have referenced, she was also a mother, a grandmother and a great-grandmother. But what she placed above all else was a sense of responsibility, a constant and unremitting sense of duty to serve, which she fulfilled even in her last days. She was the most travelled and longest-serving monarch and visited Northern Ireland many times, 3 as Princess Elizabeth and 22 as Queen. And although the Queen travelled widely across this island, which she called a beautiful place, Lagan Valley was honoured to have the royal residence. Indeed, it was Lagan Valley that was to host one of those earlier visits by Princess Elizabeth in 1945, with the country having come through the ravages of war. Typical of the future Queen's selflessness, and like so many others, she had joined the ATS and visited RAF Long Kesh in her uniform. I can't imagine how much this meant to so many people at the time, including my granny working in the factory and my granddad working for 23MU RAF at that base. But this came to characterise the Queen, humble, down to earth, not wanting to be served, but to serve. For many, they traced the timeline of their lives with her: war, changes in lives, marriages, and babies being welcomed into the world. Despite her special position as monarch, there was a shared humanity, a lived experience, and we often shared milestones together. Lagan Valley holds a special significance for the royal family, with Hillsborough Castle being the royal residence in Northern Ireland, and in 2021, Hillsborough received the letters patent for Royal Hillsborough, an acknowledgement of the special role the people of the village have played over many decades, with the castle often playing a seminal role in our history and politics. Over the last days, it is only right that it has become a focal point for mourning, for expressing both grief and gratitude, with the village and its people playing its part once more, as they say goodbye to our Queen and welcome the new King Charles III. Life was about service for the Queen, but it was also about using her position to make a difference, to build bridges, to find the words when no one else could, and she made no exception when it came to Northern Ireland. Having read much from the Queen over the last few days, one quote about Northern Ireland strikes me. "It is clear that reconciliation, equality and mutual understanding cannot be taken for granted and will require sustained fortitude and commitment, and I have seen these qualities here in abundance." Even in her death, her words give us food for thought, a challenge, but hope for the future that we can build together. Even in death, guiding, leading, encouraging. A wonderful woman who will remain unparalleled in service, who has left her indelible mark on history and our hearts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, and I call Tom Elliott.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and can I firstly thank you and your staff and appreciate this time of reflection here for the late Her Majesty the Queen. And you know, it is very, very trying times, and even now it sounds as if this is a beacon of hope, which we all long for in this Northern Ireland. But I remember Queen Elizabeth as a great friend of Northern Ireland. She visited our constituency of Fermanagh and South Tyrone on many occasions, and indeed the date that King George VI died and the day that the Queen became Queen Elizabeth II will always be remembered in our household, because it's the day that my mother and late father were married. The 6th of February 1952 was always a double celebration on that particular date as we move forward in the Elliott household. But I remember the first time that I met the Queen was in 1981 at the Royal Show in Stoneleigh in England, when I was over as an agricultural student there visiting, and I thought it was a once in a lifetime to meet the Queen. Thankfully, I had that opportunity on other occasions, and I said when she did visit Fermanagh and South Tyrone, I remember visiting our own community of Ballinamallard, the little village of Ballinamallard, and it was a great occasion for that community. And indeed again, and Mr Poots has referred to it, when she opened the South West Acute Hospital in Enniskillen, and indeed when she crossed the street in Enniskillen from St McCartan's Cathedral across to St Michael's Church. That was a great day in 2012. And again, just before that, I recall being in Dublin the year before that to meet the Queen at the state visit there. And again, that was hope and reconciliation, where the Queen was showing out the goodwill of her and her position. And I have to say, I think that was recognised by not just the Unionist community and the Nationalist community, but those communities even beyond those within our island. So that extensive public service, 70 years as monarch, and it started even before that. And those were very trying and testing times as well, because they were all in the public view. We can all live life in the public view here, but a lot of it is behind the scenes, and we haven't always been in public life, but the monarch was. So that, combined with her deep Christian faith, will be etched in our history, I do believe, and is a special era for all of us. But at this stage, as one chapter closes, another opens. So to His Majesty King Charles III, we offer our sincere sympathy to him and to all of the royal family, and we wish him well as he takes on that new role, and God save the King.
I call Diane Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with profound sadness that I rise to express my deepest sympathy and that of my constituents in Upper Bann to His Majesty King Charles III and the whole of the royal family on the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Her life was devoted to the service of our nation. She was a constant presence in an ever-changing world, a source of wisdom and stability. Our hearts are grateful. They say that you will always remember where you were when world-changing events took place. Last Thursday, I was travelling on the train from the European Parliament to Brussels Airport with my colleague Philip Brett and Cara Hunter. We had been checking the news on and off all day. On hearing our shock at the news, and after we had shed a few tears, the lady who was checking the tickets came up to ask us if the Queen was dead. To us, she was our Queen. To others, as President Macron said, she was the Queen, the most famous woman in the world, admired by millions, revered by statesmen and politicians, some of whom are said to have been reduced to quivering wrecks in her presence. And some have spoken today of her twinkling eyes and her sense of humour, and I like to think that they twinkled a little brighter after some of those encounters. I have had the privilege of meeting the Queen on a number of occasions. One of those occasions was many years ago when Nigel was Lord Mayor of Belfast. The day before her arrival, 2 policemen had been injured in an attack at the back of Boots in the city centre. When she came forward to the lineup, she inquired about the health of the injured and then went on to say that she had seen Nigel speaking about the attack on the evening news the previous night. Now, I took away a couple of things from that brief encounter. The Queen was touched by the violence and the pain of Northern Ireland. She was concerned for the safety of her citizens. But in my naivety, I was completely surprised that the Queen had been watching the 6 o'clock news, maybe with a cup of tea, just like the rest of us. We have all experienced varying emotions since the news broke that Her Majesty had passed away. And across generations, this has taken many forms. For many of us, it is another lost connection to parents and loved ones, a sense of a generation quietly fading away. To my very young grandchildren, she was the woman who had tea with Paddington Bear and carried marmalade sandwiches in her handbag. The Queen had a strong faith. She expressed this constantly in her Christmas messages and talked about the message of the gospel being her guiding light. She was an exemplar of practical Christianity, a leader who reached out the hand of reconciliation, even in difficult circumstances. Today we mourn her passing, but as she would have wanted, we offer our allegiance to our new King, Charles III. God save the King.
And I call Connie Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Thursday, we lost a remarkable woman, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And I am privileged today to use my first contribution in this chamber to pay tribute to her on behalf of my constituents in North Down. Firstly, our thoughts and prayers go out to the entire royal family as they grieve a much-loved and irreplaceable mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. The Queen was a figurehead and leader for 70 years, dedicating herself to the country with a vigour and energy that defied her age for much of her life. The Queen was also dedicated to reconciliation across these islands and used her position to show leadership and promote Anglo-Irish relations during a difficult period of our history. Her selfless devotion to her duties as Queen was a prime example of leadership from the only monarch most of us had ever known. Although I never had the privilege of meeting the Queen, throughout recent Platinum Jubilee celebrations, I enjoyed hearing stories and anecdotes from many people across my constituency of what the Queen meant to them. The Queen visited North Down in both 1961 and 2009, and it is clear from speaking with those who met her that the Queen's smile, sense of humour and genuine interest in everyone that she met left both a lasting impression and an enduring affection. Just a few short months ago, my home Bangor was honoured to receive city status as part of Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee Year celebrations, a poignant and lasting reminder of a legacy that will continue in the years to come. In 1947, on her 21st birthday, the Queen declared that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service. Regardless of the views anyone here holds concerning monarchy, I think we can all agree that the Queen kept her promise to us. An incredible life defined by her dedication to public service, leadership and humility in her role. The Queen was a steadfast constant in a changing world. As we bid farewell to our longest reigning monarch and welcome King Charles III, we remember and pay tribute to her grace, fortitude and unwavering commitment to us all. Thank you.
Thank you, and I call Robbie Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure that many, if not all of us in this room, have watched, listened and read of the unmeasurable impact that the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth has had right around the globe. The outpouring of grief, sorrow, and that unknown emotion, which has caught many by surprise, has been a once-in-a-lifetime, yet cathartic and seminal moment that will be indelibly imprinted on our hearts forever. Yet today I would like to take an opportunity to remind everyone here that there was a much more powerful, impactful and useful legacy that Queen Elizabeth II will leave with us, and that is her life well lived. This morning I would like to take a brief moment to speak about what I believe will be measured and remembered as perhaps one of the greatest love stories of all time. Some of us are well used to a level of intrusion in our lives and personal space due to the work and responsibilities that we have. Politicians, celebrities, and sports stars often find themselves under the microscope for a fraction of our lives. That moment of fame or influence does indeed come at a cost. Some of us even like it. But the Queen had that glare thrust upon her for every single second of her life. That pressure, responsibility, and at times threat will have been an enormous burden and stress to her. I would say it was unimaginable in scale. However, it was her duty as Queen, powered by an unadulterated love of her nation, the Commonwealth, and people around this world that enabled her to serve relentlessly until she died last week. The scale of her devotion to her people was epitomised when she lost her husband, lifelong love, and life partner, Prince Philip, during COVID. In an act of solidarity and humility, she set aside a state funeral to provide an example of love and care for all her people in her grieving loss. A woman who led by example in a global pandemic, who did not demand that the bar was raised for her or her family. An example of love for us all. The relationships east and west between these islands has been, for the greater part, fractious and at times hostile. Sadly, at the detriment to many families across these islands and in our communities, and the Queen was no different. The loss of her cousin, Lord Mountbatten, meant that the Queen was exposed most cruelly to that pain and the loss that many have suffered. And like all of us in this room, she was born into an era where the deep divisions already existed, but she didn't let any of that take away from her love for the people across all these islands, or her people, and indeed for peace. Who will ever forget her visit to the Republic of Ireland in 2011? That smile when she stepped off the plane onto the runway, her carefully chosen green suit, and how she enthralled the guests at dinner when she spoke in Irish. However, for me, this was eclipsed when in 2012, in her Diamond Jubilee year, she met and shook hands with the Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness. That hand shook many of us in all of our communities. But the Queen's love of her people and nation was matched by her love for peace and reconciliation, an example of love and duty for all of us. Finally, Mr. Speaker, and to end this tribute, I hope with no irreverence, I have loved watching the evolving humour and sense of ordinariness that the greatest monarch of all time showed us. Whether it was having lunch with Paddington Bear and pulling that marmalade sandwich from her handbag, or jumping from a helicopter with 007, whom I have to say is more than a passing resemblance to our own Justin McNulty, she was able to connect and inspire many of us in an instant. However, what I don't think any of you will know is of Her Majesty's love for corned beef, a staple for many of us growing up here in Northern Ireland and across the globe. However, in her search for the best corned beef available, the Queen found a wee shop in Moira, County Armagh in Lagan Valley, that makes the best corned beef of all. My brother, who manages much of the production in McCartney's in Moira, had one of the greatest thrills of his life when he started to receive orders from Buckingham Palace for this locally made corned beef. And he would share with me that the call would come into the shop at times, and the person on the other side would simply say, "This is London calling. We would like to order some corned beef." Mr. Speaker, in closing, I sincerely pray that King Charles III continues that same legacy of his mother with an unadulterated love for the people of these islands and the Commonwealth, and for peace and reconciliation. And perhaps the phone will still ring in Moira with the words, "London calling, can we order some more corned beef? God save the King."
And following the product placement, then I call on Gary Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank you and the Assembly team for making the arrangements for us to pay our tributes today. I rise on behalf of my constituents in Londonderry and indeed myself to pass on my sincere condolences to His Majesty King Charles III and the royal family following the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Across Northern Ireland, the United Kingdom, Europe and indeed the world, there's a deep sense of sadness and loss at the passing of Her Majesty. There has been an outpouring of condolences from every corner of our society, and it has been testament to Her Majesty's reign that we see a common sense of decency and respect, crossing allegiances and cultural backgrounds. We entered this Platinum Jubilee year marking Her Majesty's 70th year on the throne. Her service to our country and Commonwealth has been unwavering and steadfast. We have been blessed with her leadership, her guidance and her devotion over those years. I think Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, summed it up well when he said, "She seemed so timeless and so wonderful that I'm afraid that we had come to believe, just like children, that she would just go on and on." Her Majesty was indeed a loyal and constant part of our lives, ever since telling the Commonwealth as a young princess, "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong." That pledge has most certainly been honoured. Her Majesty was patron to over 500 organisations, and of course she carried out more than 21,000 engagements over the course of her reign. Not least, of course, were her visits here to Northern Ireland and indeed my own constituency in Londonderry. She visited there in 1945 to St Columb's Cathedral as a young princess with her parents, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. Being in the city again in 1953 as Queen, and a further visit in 2009 to visit the newly opened Lisneal College. Her visits here have created many wonderful memories and a lasting legacy of her service. Whilst many of us looked to the Queen for the voice of reassurance and consistency, it was clear that her wisdom and strength was her Saviour and Lord God. As a committed Christian, Her Majesty often spoke of her faith in her speeches and her broadcasts. Like many families, my family traditionally gathered around the TV to watch Her Majesty's televised messages of hope and encouragement. In her 2014 Christmas broadcast, she said, "For me, the life of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, whose birth we celebrate today, is an inspiration and an anchor in my life. Christ's example has taught me to seek to respect and value all people of whatever faith or none." Her Majesty knew that the only constant that we have in this earthly life is our Lord God and Heavenly Father. So we thank God for Her Majesty the Queen, the wonderful years and the wonderful life that she has lived, and the many lives that she has touched over the years. And indeed, in the words of Paddington, "Thank you, ma'am, for everything. The torch has now been passed to your beloved son and our new King. God save the King."
Thank you, Nicole. Andrew Muir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I speak briefly today about a moment we all knew would eventually come, but I personally dreaded. I speak to pay tribute and to give thanks for a lifetime of service, and also to offer condolences on behalf of the people of North Down. North Down has a proud and long history, as has been outlined earlier, in association with Queen Elizabeth II. Whether it's in relation to her first visit in 1961, when she visited Queen's Hall in Hollywood, Bangor Castle and the Royal Ulster Yacht Club, or back when she returned again in 2009, visiting yet again Royal Ulster Yacht Club. And I remember speaking to the staff after that visit, who were in awe at the warmth and charm that she shown to them. They were grateful that she had came back again, and the warm welcome that she had given to everyone. For me, the visit by Queen Elizabeth II and the late Duke of Edinburgh to Ireland in their state visit in 2011 was seismic. It showed real leadership to progress reconciliation. At the time, William, the now new Prince of Wales, stated, "It's like a door that's been locked to her for a long time, and she's been dying to see what's on the other side of it." I am delighted she was able to unlock that door and she was able to visit Ireland and to be able to progress reconciliation on these islands. Today, I say thank you. Thank you for your service, and also that my thoughts and prayers are with the royal family, most especially to King Charles, who, let's remember, is grieving the loss of his mother whilst also preparing to reign over us as the King. Thank you.
Thank you, and I call Mike Nesbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to begin by thanking you for calling people back for this tribute today, and also for the words you used in your notice. And I think it is worth putting on record that under this one roof today we have Republicans and Royalists joined in the common cause of offering respect. I think we agree, as many people agree, that this is a moment of history, of course, but maybe, just maybe, something else. Maybe a moment when hope will triumph over experience. And those of us who have dedicated our lives to public service may rethink and recalibrate and remember that there is a concept known as the greater good, which must trump personal and party political interests. Since Thursday, I have reflected many times on the wisdom of the authors of the 1998 Belfast Good Friday Agreement. In opening that document with a pledge with regard to relationships, they said we should take the opportunity for a fresh start, to build relationships based on tolerance, on reconciliation, on offering each other mutual respect, and in building mutual trust. And I note the First Minister-designate made reference to some of those values in her remarks. But can any of us match Her Majesty's commitment to rebuilding and repairing relationships? Think only of that state visit in 2011 to Ireland. Think of the venues that she chose to visit. Think of the words and the values that she chose to articulate. The concept of leadership, or perhaps the lack of it, is part of our daily political and public discourse. And perhaps this is the moment that we can turn into the moment where we seize the day, when we carpe diem, when we recommit ourselves to delivering for all the people that we serve. I sincerely hope that that is part of the legacy for Her Majesty. My condolences to the royal family. God save the King.
I thank the member for that, and I call Jonathan Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to pay tribute and reflect upon the life of the late great Queen Elizabeth II on behalf of my constituents in Upper Bann and the wider public in Northern Ireland. I think when reflecting upon Her Majesty's historic reign, we are best served when we listen to her own words. I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family, to which we all belong. Fine words from a then 21-year-old princess who so fervently fulfilled precisely what she did promise. Putting into words what the death of Her Majesty the Queen means to one is a somewhat difficult task. Many of us have experienced a deep sense of personal loss. There is a synthesis of both sorrow and thankfulness. Sorrow at the loss of this nation's mother, grandmother, and matriarch, but yet we find thankfulness. Thankfulness that we have shared in and lived through this great second Elizabethan age, and to have been ruled over by the greatest Britain to have ever lived. Truly a queen of all our hearts. Through Her Majesty's death, we are reminded of what she achieved in her life, an entire life of unwavering devotion and ultimate sacrifice. From military service in a bygone time of black and white television and ration packs, to marmalade sandwiches with Paddington Bear. Her infectious connection and universal admiration transcended the generations, a rock throughout these earthly ages. Here in Northern Ireland in particular, we have felt the loving and ever so stable hand of Her late Majesty's calm continuity through deep times of instability in our land. A figure we look to equally in times of deep despair, but also in celebration. Identity is something in which we talk about often in this place, and so often can be difficult to explain on these islands, with the many complex and yet unique paradoxes. Though that feeling for many across the generations, perhaps some for the first time, of what it feels like to be British, is something that is intrinsic, natural, and cannot be taken away. With all our hearts, it is part of who we are. Since the news broke, the world has seen the mystique of monarchy and beauty of the British Constitution. Even in death and sorrow, we have continuity and stability. With that said, we can perhaps pay Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth the Great, the ultimate honour in which a generation, mostly now gone, afforded her all those years ago. That is unwavering love, loyalty, and respect for her beloved son, King Charles III. It is with that spirit that I close my remarks with those immortal words: "The Queen is dead, long live the King."
Thank you, Member. And I call Pam Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a moment when a ship pitching and rolling in the midst of stormy seas begins to doubt that it will ever see land again, and all on board fear that they're lost forever. And then the cry goes up from the bridge, "Lighthouse, we are safe." These last few days have felt just as uncertain as we on board the ship that is our great United Kingdom have watched our guiding light, Queen Elizabeth II, grow dim, flicker, and finally fail. For a moment, we wondered if we could ever survive without her. This wonderful sovereign, the heart of our nation, we are truly in uncharted waters. After the storm, when the waves calm, we realise that in the realm of our new king, we are safe and secure, as the monarchy that we cherish continues to evolve to meet the needs of an ever-changing world. For now, though, we pay tribute to Elizabeth, our dearly loved Queen. We will never see her like again. I had the privilege to meet Queen Elizabeth during my time as Mayor of Antrim in 2010, a moment that I will never forget. A monarch, a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, the greatest example we will ever know of a life dedicated to public service. There can be no finer example to us all in this place as we strive to serve those who put their trust in us. May God truly honour our greatest monarch with the reward and with the rest that she so richly deserves. God bless you, Elizabeth, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you. And I call Stephen Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we say thank you to Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in British history, and someone who I believe was the most loved individual in our world. The outpouring of grief and love for our Queen has been so clearly demonstrated right across our country, nation, and indeed our world. Her Majesty the Queen's life and legacy we will never see the like of again. I want to convey my deepest condolences to our royal family on behalf of myself and the people of North Down I am honoured to represent. The Queen's dedicated, selfless service
was a true inspiration to us all. In the Queen's Christmas message in 2014, Her Majesty said, "Christ's example has taught me to seek to respect and value all people of whatever faith or none." The Queen's strong Christian faith undoubtedly guided and helped her throughout her remarkable 70-year reign as our monarch. Her Majesty the Queen was rightly cherished and adored by so many right across our great nation, regardless of age, colour, class or creed. During her 25 visits here, she left many very special memories for those who were privileged to see or indeed meet her. And I personally count it a great honour to have seen her a number of times in person, including during a very memorable visit to Queen's University in 2008 whilst I was studying there. Indeed, she made a number of visits to my own constituency of North Down, including officially opening the Queen's Hall in Holywood back in 1961, along with the late great Duke of Edinburgh. Amongst other engagements, she also visited Bangor Marina in 2009, and with many local people have been reminiscing so fondly of those memorable visits in the last number of solemn and sombre days. And indeed, it was very fitting that during her Platinum Jubilee celebrations just a few short months ago, Her Majesty the Queen conferred city status upon Bangor, an honour that will forever be cherished. We say thanks to God for Her Majesty's life of service, a life so very well lived. I join with others in wishing His Royal Highness King Charles III the strength and wisdom to fulfil his duties to our great nation, and may he know God's help and guidance in the days ahead. That goodwill was so clearly demonstrated right across our country yesterday at the various proclamation events, which were so well attended right across Northern Ireland, including the County Down event in Bangor. And I think the crowd that turned out in the treacherous weather conditions was testimony to that. Long may he reign. God save our King.
Thank you, and I call Emma Little-Pengelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been so many beautiful, eloquent remarks on the sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II. I have no doubt that there will be many more in the days to come. Words of sorrow, yes, but also so many words of affection, reflection and love. It is an absolute honour to add my short contribution at this time of national mourning on behalf of the constituents of Lagan Valley. Across the United Kingdom and indeed the world, there has been an outpouring of sympathy, but also of deep admiration. Strikingly, Mr. Speaker, these sentiments have come from so many different creeds and backgrounds. In the 70 years of her reign, the world has changed beyond recognition. Times of huge turbulence, despair and fragility, but also times of happiness and celebration. Generation after generation experienced this changing world through periods of personal grief and family joy, of national mourning, but also of public celebration. And throughout it all, Her Majesty the Queen was a reassuring and unshakable presence, binding together the generations, the past with the present, a calm in the midst of the unpredictable storms of life. That value was immeasurable. She will be much missed. Her Majesty's was a life well lived. Born to rule, she lived to serve. And in those decades of tireless service, she ensured that she shone the light on the incredible work of individuals, communities and organisations, the length and breadth of this United Kingdom. And in 2016, she expressed this so well in saying, "I often draw strength from meeting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Volunteers, carers, community organisers and good neighbours, the unsung heroes whose quiet dedication makes them special. They are an inspiration to those who know them." And that is why she significantly extended the honour system to recognise that. Her Majesty knew that the cleaner in the hospital saves as many lives as the doctor who performs the operations. And while Her Majesty wore the crown, the greatness of this united kingdom came from the millions of people who give selfless service every day. Her Majesty was the greatest ambassador we had, a healer of wounds, a voice for times of despair, but also of hope. She was a beacon of reconciliation, stepping forward and leading by example. Her Majesty overseen the movement from empire to the Commonwealth, taking particular personal dedication to this cause. Her Majesty was a woman of principle, of strong values, of unceasing service to her country, sustained through the years by her deep and unshakable faith in the people of the United Kingdom, but also in Christ, her Saviour. No matter our background, our views, hers was a life that we should be inspired by, for hers was lived so utterly in the service of others. For that, what gratitude we owe. I want to end my remarks with Her Majesty's own words from 2014, where she said, "For me, the life of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, is an inspiration and an anchor in my life, a role model of reconciliation and forgiveness. He stretched out his hands in love, acceptance, and healing. Christ's example has taught me to seek to respect and value all people of whatever faith and none. On behalf of the constituents of Lagan Valley, thank you, ma'am. You will be so deeply missed and were so deeply loved. God save the King."
I call Brian Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The many expressions of personally felt sorrow and affection upon the passing of Her late Majesty the Queen reminds many of us, myself included, of the reaction that we have had previously to the loss of a close family member. The late Queen has been a matriarch figure, not just nationally and internationally, but for many of us within our own lives and our family circles. In North Belfast constituency, a mural unveiled earlier this year for her Platinum Jubilee on the Shankill Road at Crimea Street has become a focal point for the laying of flowers in remembrance and also for written expressions of sympathy to our royal family upon their deep loss. On a personal note, I had the pleasure of being in the presence of Her Majesty on several occasions during my years on Belfast City Council, including when she and the Duke of Edinburgh visited the grounds of Stormont here in 2012 as part of her Diamond Jubilee visit to Northern Ireland. 2 years later, I had the great pleasure of actually meeting the Queen and Prince Philip and speaking with each of them when they visited Belfast City Hall in 2014. And I consider that to be one of the highlights of my life. I am a convinced supporter of our system of constitutional monarchy, with a lineage stretching back over 1,000 years. We see the unifying strength of that at times such as this and the direct connection it provides to our past. Her final gift to the nation in this time of mourning has been a strengthening of our union. International admiration of our late Queen has contributed massively to the influence, esteem and soft power of the United Kingdom in the world. Among her various responsibilities, one which she cherished most was head of the Commonwealth. She took great interest in her overseas realms and peoples and the Commonwealth of Nations, which accounts for around 1/3 of the world's total population. Our late Queen's outstanding quality was her devotion to duty and to public service, fulfilling the pledge that she made in 1947 at the age of just 21, as others have referenced. Many have commented that this was a continuation of the dedication that she witnessed in her father, who came to the throne in difficult circumstances and helped lead the country through the Second World War. As the baton has now passed on to our new King, Charles III, I have no doubt that he will have learned greatly from his mother's exemplary approach and record of service. So we give thanks to Almighty God for the life and service of Queen Elizabeth II. We are privileged to have lived in this second Elizabethan age, and we pledge our support and allegiance to her son and heir, King Charles III. Long live the King. God save the King.
Thank you, and I call Deborah Erskine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of us will feel an overwhelming sense of grief since the news of Her Majesty the Queen's passing. Our heartfelt condolences are sent from my constituency of Fermanagh and South Tyrone and indeed this chamber today. Her Majesty the Queen was held in such high regard across the country, the Commonwealth and indeed the world. Our words cannot adequately sum up what Her Majesty meant to us. The Queen visited Northern Ireland 25 times, both as Princess and as Queen, and she took a keen interest as this part of her realms. For me, as a female and as one of the youngest unionists in this chamber, she was the ultimate role model. Her Majesty became Queen during a time when it was truly a man's world, and Her Majesty was the epitome of public service and steadfastness. She embraced the technological change and yet held to her principles in an ever-changing world. A lesson for me as a political representative, and indeed for all of us. She carried out her duties with the utmost solemnity, unwavering dedication and loyalty. It is really difficult to think of a world without Queen Elizabeth II. We look to Her Majesty in times of joy and trouble. She is all we have ever known as sovereign, and this moment marks a huge page turn in the chapter of the history of the United Kingdom. Elizabeth the Great has passed, and we, her subjects, are indebted to her loyalty to us. It's no surprise in this chamber that I represent the most western part of His Majesty's realms, in Fermanagh and South Tyrone. And one visit that Her Majesty the Queen, which I think has left a mark on all of us in Enniskillen, it was the location of a deeply symbolic visit by Her Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh in 2012. And I remember lining the streets of Enniskillen that day, expectant to see the Queen. And we were not disappointed. And that day lives long in the lives and the memory of everybody from my constituency. And recently, the Queen's outfit from that day was on display in Enniskillen. And again, people from across the community, both young and old, came to see memorabilia and the Queen's outfit. One thing that was evident on those two occasions, the Queen transcended everything. Such was her appeal that she brought all sections of the community together. Her Majesty has left a lasting legacy from the Queen's canopy, the Commonwealth, how she showed in true form what peace and reconciliation looks like. But the greatest legacy of all that the Queen has left behind is her quiet, genuine Christian faith, of which she never shied away from sharing. The Queen said, "Throughout my life, the message and teachings of Christ have been my guide, and in them I find hope." May the royal family find hope and strength in Christ in the days and months that lie ahead. We pray in these days for the royal family and indeed King Charles III. Today we thank God for the life of Her Majesty the Queen, and we look back with pride on this Elizabethan period with a sense of gratitude. Long live the King. God save the King.
Thank you, and I call Philip Brett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the complex beauty of our human nature dictates that it's only in death that we truly comprehend the enormity of those we love have had upon us. And for me and for countless others across these islands, a world without Queen Elizabeth never seemed a possibility, selfishly wrapping her in a cloak of invincibility, hoping that, like the crown, she would be eternal. We dared not consider a time without her, because deep down we feared this very moment. For us, Her Majesty was the very essence of our national identity, the physical and spiritual manifestation of our national consciousness, our moral compass, representing and, more importantly, epitomising all that which we as a people and as a nation held dear. In many ways, Her Majesty had the unique ability to know us better than we knew ourselves, and that is why in times of global uncertainty and in domestic disquiet, she was our greatest comfort and strength. In times of seemingly immovable darkness, it was her that the country turned. She would be that beacon of light that would always chart us through safer waters and ensure that we would be looked after. In an ever-changing world, she remained that cherished constant. In times of unpredictability, she was the one that changed not. And that is why the gaze of the nation always turned to her. Not just because, Mr. Speaker, she represented everything that we were as a people, but much more than that. She, Her Majesty the Queen, represented everything that as a people we aspired to be. Her Majesty had a unique ability to bring people together, and as in life, her death has served to unite communities in grief and in common understanding, to which I wish to acknowledge the generous and warm tributes from across traditional divides and from all members on all sides of this House here today. It is truly appreciated. Although we must now live to learn without her, her legacy lives on. That is a legacy that will be found not just in the books of history, but a legacy that will be in millions and millions of people across this Commonwealth and in generations yet to come. Because the values that she personified, those of duty, those of service, those of honour, and those of grace, never age. Our Elizabethan era may have ended, but its enduring values and influence and timeless impact will proudly outlive us all. Yes, it is with unimaginable sorrow and grief that we mourn her passing, but in so doing, we celebrate it because it was dedicated to us. On behalf of a grateful nation and the people of North Belfast, I simply say, thank you, ma'am, and utter the words never before spoken by my generation: the Queen is dead, long live the King.
Thank you, and I call Dan Forsyth.
Today we share in remembrance and thanksgiving for Queen Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories. Queen, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith, we send heartfelt condolences to her entire family. Our beloved late Queen made a solemn vow on her 21st birthday, which inspires me in my role as MLA, where, in my time here, whether it be long or short, I shall be devoted to the service of all the constituents of South Down. The Queen's 70-year reign over us was an incredible demonstration of steadfast, noble, gracious, inspiring leadership and selfless service to us all. For this, we express our overwhelming thanks. In South Down, the gratitude and respect for our Queen is immense. I express this thanks from all of those who loved her dearly. From our loyal orders, of which our area hosts the largest in the country. From our armed forces, both those currently in service and our veterans. From our churches, our schools, our local community organisations, and from the many individuals who thought so much of her. I express a very special thanks on behalf of those in the area who have been recognised by the Queen for awards or received direct communications. We were especially moved locally for one of Her Majesty's last pieces of correspondence to be a letter to the Schomburg Society in Mourne, just over 3 weeks ago, on the dedication of a VC statue in Kilkeel. This letter and message now take on even more poignancy. We send our condolences from South Down, in our corner of Northern Ireland, to our new King and his entire family at this time. Queen Elizabeth's service to the people and to her country was surpassed only by her service to her King of Kings, Jesus Christ. I am proud to share in her faith and her Saviour, to confidently say, Your Majesty, I know we will meet again. And I challenge all in this chamber and watching beyond as to whether they can say the same. In my local worship yesterday, my minister prayed for Elizabeth Windsor, no more a titled queen, but simply a child of God. A beautiful, faithful thought as we thank her for her service. We pray for a long and faithful reign by King Charles III. God save the King.
Thank you, and I call Alan Robinson.
I rise, Mr. Speaker, to pay a very personal tribute on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. When I was elected to this House back in May, my thoughts immediately turned to the content of a maiden speech. I envisaged preparing a speech on a topic related to East Londonderry, such as transportation, housing or educational issues, never once thinking that I would be standing in this House paying tribute at a time of such a global event in our history that has left this world with the heaviest of hearts. Many of us in this House probably recall little of what was happening in our world as 5-year-olds, but I have a vivid memory of that very tender age back in 1977. Seared deep into my memory was the visit to the north coast of Queen Elizabeth on board the Royal Yacht. I can clearly recall the excitement of that visit. At that time, for I and the children of my generation, and it almost being akin to the excitement of a child on Christmas Eve. And that was the unique effect our Queen had throughout her reign, leaving an indelible mark right across every generation, regardless of age, of background, of gender, of sexuality. She generated a magical excitement which built a love for her that has spanned our entire lives. As a former Causeway Coast and Glens councillor, I was overjoyed when she visited Royal Portrush Golf Club for lunch and reception back in 2016. And during that series of engagements, she travelled on a steam train from Korean train station along raw and stunning scenery to Ballerina on the foothills of beautiful Benevna Mountain, a location that is indeed fit for a queen. And of course, many of us in this House can recall her Diamond Jubilee visit to the grounds of this building, where both she and the late Prince Philip were driven through this estate in an open-top vehicle, cheered on by many thousands of her loyal subjects. On a wider context and beyond my own personal memories, it is safe to say that our nation was not ready to say goodbye to our precious Queen. As the only British monarch most of us have ever known, it is difficult to imagine our world without such a unique and wonderful woman. She was undoubtedly the most iconic and admired woman on the planet, who has given us impeccable service that we will never see the like of again. We will miss her comforting smile, her soothing, reassuring guidance, and of course, her very deep wisdom. She has been a faithful servant to us all and to our Lord, and may she be received with grace into glory, where she will be forever remembered as this nation's greatest ever treasure. Our Queen united this nation in life, and she has united this nation in deep sense of grief. And as this province mourns, can I conclude by saying, on behalf of the people of East Londonderry, whose birthright stem from Mount Sandal, from the River's Row, Agivy and the Ban, from the rugged and majestic peaks of Benevna, from the ancient woodlands of Fon Valley, from the white sandy beaches of Bunnow and of White Rocks, and from the vistas of Glen Chian, I hope you realised how much we will miss you and how much you were so dearly loved. It is the end of a wonderful life and of service, and for that we extend our heartfelt sadness to our new King and to the entire royal family. God save our King.
Thank the member, and I call Tom Buchanan.
Mr. Speaker, the 8th of September 2002 will no doubt be a date etched on the memory of multitudes of people across the UK Northern Ireland, indeed around the world, as the day the heart of the nation were broken by the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Many will remember in years to come where they were, what they were doing, what they were about whenever the sad news filtered through of so great of the impact that her passing has had on many within our nation. The outpouring of grief and sympathy from multitudes of people across the nation and around the world stand as a testimony to the esteem that she held and was held in by all across our land. As today we pause to reflect with heavy hearts on 70 glorious years of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's reign, we do so with thanksgiving for her dedication and service which marked her out as the exemplary woman that she was, steadfast and unshakable, a defender of the faith, a great affection amongst the nation, dedicated to the work and service of the people, an inspiration to all, one who led by example and reached out in the most difficult of circumstances, a woman who reigned well, whose reign was blessed and owned of God. Throughout her 70-year reign on numerous occasions, Her Majesty spoke of her faith, and we've heard that today from numerous speakers right around the chamber. And we're reminded of her words, as has been already alluded to in 2014, when she said, "The life of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, is an inspiration and an anchor in my life." It was that anchor in her life that kept her through the difficult periods of her 70-year reign, that led her and guided her in that calm and compassionate way that she demonstrated to our nation, to our Commonwealth, and right across the world. And I believe we can echo the words of the Apostle Paul today and pay tribute to the Queen when Paul said, "I have fought a good fight, I have finished the course, and I have kept the faith." And no doubt, for the late Queen Elizabeth II, we can attribute those very same words to her. A woman who fought a good fight, a woman who finished the course, a woman who kept the faith. We are indebted to her today with the deepest of gratitude for all that she has done for us. To the royal family, on their loss of a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, we tender our deepest and heartfelt sympathy to her today and assure them of our prayerful support. And we wish King Charles III God's blessing in future days. Long may he reign over us. God save the King.
Thank you, member. And I call Keith Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we take the time to acknowledge the life of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. She was a constant figure that remained for so many years and will leave a legacy behind for even more years to come. On behalf of my constituents in Mid Ulster, I want to express our deepest sympathy to His Majesty King Charles III, Her Majesty the Queen Consort, and the entire royal household. We send them our love, thoughts and prayers as they mourn the loss of a special mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. Her late Majesty was of great significance across the nation, and she was a symbol of stability for us all. Even in times of trouble, we owe her the greatest respect for maintaining the foundations of the country that we live in today, and we devote our time to remembering her in the coming days as she devoted hers to us for 70 years. The Queen's first official visit to Northern Ireland was as a Princess Elizabeth in 1945, alongside her parents King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. Her first visit as Queen followed her coronation, accompanied by the Duke of Edinburgh. In May 2002, she visited Lockery College in Cookstown. Her late Majesty had great significance within even the most rural places in Northern Ireland, and within my constituency of Mid Ulster, in the small rural village of Pomeroy, the local school is named Queen Elizabeth II Primary School, and my own Orange Hall is named Queen Elizabeth II Marie Orange Hall, of which I am immensely proud. Her loss is felt deeply by so many in Mid Ulster. Her Majesty's death has brought most in our society together, as we share a great sense of sadness that such a prominent figure is no longer here to guide us. We look forward now, however, to a new King, Charles III, who we hope will guide and strengthen our country in the same way that our late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has done for 70 years before. In March this year, His Majesty King Charles III, Her Majesty Queen Consort, visited Cookstown and went on a walkabout to meet well-wishers as well as being introduced to local businesses, school children and community members. They visited Superstars Cafe, Lockery College and Listen House, a true honour for them, and residents of Castle Dawson back in 2004, where he also visited. Mr. Speaker, I have no stories like the previous Prime Minister, Theresa May, with the cheese issue. We don't know if she broke the 5-second rule. She didn't disclose that. Robbie Butler and his corned beef story, how much of true that's to be declared from Robbie. Certainly none to share today and at this time. I pray that God will grant King Charles III wisdom and health during his reign. God save the King. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the member, and I call Harry Harvey.
Mr. Speaker, I rise, Mr. Speaker, to extend my personal condolences and those of thousands of my Strangford constituents to King Charles III and the members of the royal family. I pray that Almighty God will comfort and sustain them at this, their time of grief. As Her Majesty once said, grief is the price that we pay for love. The love of a grateful nation has been evident since the passing of our beloved monarch. The nation and the Commonwealth owe Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II a tremendous debt of gratitude for her steadfast service to us over the length of her reign, for the exemplary dignity, wisdom and diligence with which she carried out her role, and for the great personal sacrifice which she made in devotion to our country. Her Majesty's love of Northern Ireland was always evident throughout her reign. Particularly when she visited, she was held in deep affection by our Ulster subjects who found Her Majesty someone upon whom they could trust and depend. Her Majesty comforted and sustained the nation through many difficult times, particularly for our own province, as has already been said. She played a significant role in the work of reconciliation across these islands, and her historic visit to the Republic of Ireland in 2011 was just one event in a lifetime of peace building. For 70 years, Her Majesty's reign provided an unparalleled constancy for our nation and its people. That constancy was grounded upon a deep and genuine faith in Jesus Christ. Indeed, our late sovereign spoke often about her faith and the strength which she drew from it. It was a living faith in a living Saviour. For our beloved Queen, her race is now run. She has fought the good fight, and she leaves behind a legacy unrivalled in history. In the words of Matthew chapter 25, we heartily cry, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter thou into the joy of thy Lord." God save the King. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, and I call William Irwin.
Mr. Speaker, and can I also thank you for allowing extra time for everyone to make their contributions today. We join together with both a solemn and yet hopeful outlook. We mourn for our late Queen Elizabeth II, yet we look to the future under our new King Charles III. This truly is a time of mixed emotion. Through my remarks before the House, I wish to convey the thoughts and sympathies of the people of the constituency of Newry-Armagh on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. People are genuinely grieving, and that grief is certainly palpable when I speak with my constituents, and it shows me clearly just how highly respected our late Queen was. Queen Elizabeth held a special place in hearts and meant so much to so many. Her reign over 70 years is unprecedented, and the longevity of her service is historic and will be a subject of much discussion and retelling for decades to come. Her influence in our society has been of the greatest quality. Her ethos of selfless service, her endless dignity, and the respect she enjoyed as a roadmap we would all do well to study and indeed follow. It's hugely important that she built her foundations on the Scriptures, and her long life has upheld the Christian faith. This sustained her in her 7 decades long journey as our Queen, comforting her and comfort our Queen in many truly sad occasions, and of course giving her bright hope, enthusiasm and peace of mind as she carried out her duties so diligently. We mourn her passing and we grieve this most significant loss. However, to somewhat allow us to cope, we have a wealth of good memories and a nation that has greatly benefited from her leadership. The late Queen's place in history is firmly implanted, and for her service I say on behalf of the people of Newry and Armagh, a heartfelt thank you. My thoughts, sympathy and prayers are continuing with King Charles III and the entire royal family at this time. In closing, we have a new king, Charles III, and I want to pay tribute to him and to wish him every blessing as he embarks on his journey, and has been mentioned in recent coverage, has been one of the longest apprenticeships. However, he has the significant benefit of his late mother, who has went before, has left behind an important and vast tool chest from which to draw experience. I am quite sure he will do very well, as recent publicity has shown the public have warmly embraced him. As we move through this week and look towards the funeral of our late Queen, and whilst this is a time of sadness, quiet reflection and recalling our memories of our beloved monarch, we can rest in the assurance of Queen Elizabeth's strong belief in the Lord. She has finished the course. She has kept the faith. That is her greatest legacy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the members, and now as a mark of respect, members, there will now be a minute's silence. Okay, please be still. Thank you, members. That concludes the tributes to Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth. I shall now write to the King and enclose a copy of today's tributes. Members are welcome to join me in signing the Book of Condolences in the Great Hall. Thank you all.